Now, babies born today can expect to live beyond 100 in the world's biggest economies if current trends in life expectancy continue. But as people live longer, retirement costs are ballooning. And the World Economic Forum is warning that the money saved is far short of what's needed. It's predicting that the world's 6 largest pension saving systems, the US, the UK, Japan, the Netherlands, Canada and Australia, will have a retirement savings gap of 224 trillion by 2050. Now, add in China and India, which have the world's largest populations, the savings gap rises to $400 trillion by 2050. That's 5 times the size of the current global economy. The World Economic Forum says that unless retirement ages are raised, there will only be 4 working people for every retired person by the year 2050, compared to the current ratio of 8 to 1. And it warns that the global economy won't be able to bear the burden. It's calling for the retirement age to be raised to at least 70 in rich countries by 2050. Joining us now from New York, Michael Drexler, who's head of financial and infrastructure systems at the World Economic Forum. Good to have you with us, Michael. So the WEF says we're sitting globally on a pensions time bomb. Is it really that serious?
Hi, Adrian. Thanks for having me. Yes, indeed, we think it's that serious. And it's really due to a confluence of some trends, some of which are, of course, very good. People are living a lot longer than they used to when pension systems were first designed. So somebody who's been born 10 years ago can now expect to probably live in retirement over 40 years because they'll live to about 100 years. And that, of course, means they will spend almost as much, if not more time in retirement than they have spent in their work life, in their traditional work life. And you can imagine what that means, of course, when people save far less than the required 10% of their salary. They don't have the means to support their standard of living as they used to. If you remember when pension systems were first designed, people probably expected to live 5 or 10 years after retirement. So a very good trend, increased longevity, together with lack of investment in the pension system and lack of savings, is creating a funding shortfall by 2050 that is going to be roughly 4 times the size of the world economy, and that's just in the 7 countries we looked at. So indeed, it's very serious.
Yeah,
we compare it to climate change, where the need for action really is now, because now you still have enough time to close that gap. But if you wait even another 5 or 10 years, the gap will be so big that measures will be necessary.
Michael, we can hear the fire truck racing to deal with this pensions time bomb as we speak. Look, is there any way of avoiding this? OK, you can increase the retirement age, say, to beyond 70. Is there any way of restructuring the way that pensions actually work? Can we head off this potential disaster?
Yes, we think it can be avoided through a combination of measures, and all of them are important. One of them is the uncomfortable truth of raising the retirement age, keeping very well in mind that we're not saying people need to work until they die, but simply when people live to close to 100 years, retiring at 65 might just be a bit too early. Number 2 is increasing access to the pension system. In many countries, including the US, a large part of the population is not part of the formal pension system, and therefore they're simply not safe enough for retirement. Thirdly, pension products need to improve and pension tools need to improve, because people are not incredibly well equipped through our education system by thinking about liabilities that are 30 or 40 years down the line. And technology can, of course, help a lot with that. And the last measure we think that's important is, like Singapore did, for example, think of ways of integrating older people into the workforce in ways that are different from a traditional full-time job, and therefore are tailored to people in their 70s or even 80s.
OK, all of that seems perfectly reasonable, except perhaps, and I can see people throwing things at their television even now, raising the retirement age. What about the argument that we've paid into these pension funds all our lives, we have a set date, and then suddenly someone moves the goalposts?
Yes. No, and that is why this debate is so emotional, of course, and rightly so. However, the point to make is, firstly, naturally, and the UK is a good example for that, that change in retirement age can't happen from one day to the next. It has to happen over a gradual period, precisely for the reason you outlined. You can't change a goalpost from one year to the next. But on the other hand, the point to make is indeed people have paid into pension systems for 40 years, but those pension systems now have to also pay them for another 40 years. And if the math doesn't add up, the math simply doesn't add up. Of course, there's another lever. If people keep retiring at the same age, what simply will happen is there isn't enough money for the required replacement, or the recommended replacement ratio of 70% of final salary. And so if people are happy to have pensions that are less than that, of course, the retirement age can be kept constant. So it's really a problem of generating enough money for the time of retirement. And there's only a few variables that obviously influence that, retirement age as being one. If people are happy with smaller pensions, then retirement age can stay the same. But we don't suggest that, because for many people, 70% is actually a very sensible replacement ratio. But your point is very well taken. You can't change these things from one year to the next, and that's why we need to start now.
OK, Michael, really good to have you with us on Counting the Cost. Many thanks indeed.
Thank you very much, Adrian.